Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here for this fireside chat. My name is Sydonie Neysmith, and I am the proud member of OWIT International. It is my pleasure and honor to be here today to host this event, and I am a board representative of the individual members who are virtual members globally of OWIT International. To give you a bit about my background, I am the founder of Black Swan Consulting, Inc. and the Strategic Women Alliance Network, SWAN. I have been deeply involved with OWIT for about 4 years, working closely as a member of the board. I was also, in my past role, a co-VP of programs for OWIT International, which is a key function that is positioned to help foster a meaningful education network and to present opportunities for women moving forward. Now, to begin our program, I would love to introduce our president, Julia Kurt, to do her welcoming remarks. Now, Julia is the founder and a global career coach herself of InKick. And she's also, as you know, our president of OWIT International. So please do join me in welcoming Julia for our welcoming remarks. Julia, feel free to turn your camera on. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sydonie, for organizing this. This is really, really gorgeous and wonderful. We love that our board members take action and initiative. And with that, welcome to everyone who just joined us. We appreciate your time. It's really precious. And for that, it's October. And October month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, or we can say as well in general, Cancer Awareness Month. That's why I'm all in pink. So commemorating and celebrating all the survivors and whoever is battling this unfortunate disease. With no further ado, I'm the president of Organization Women International Trade on the international level. And just to give you briefly an introduction about OWIT itself, we are a global membership organization for women, but also for men, because we are inclusive. And we are fostering all the people and humans who are active in all facets of international trade, specifically designed to promote the advancement of women in trade and in business. OWIT acts as the springboard, a bridge for many women-owned businesses. It facilitates that vital access to international networks and markets. As I am based in Geneva, Switzerland, naturally, we are very much acquainted with WTO, World Trade Organization, ITC, International Trade Center, WIPO, and you name it, all these international organizations itself. We are acting as connectors and collaborators, and with our strategic partners, we always organize events to raise more awareness, impact, but moreover, capacity building, acting as sponsors for raising and putting the voice of the women on the table in trade negotiations and trade policies, partnership, and of course, networking. Because for us as women-led businesses, it's very important that we network with each other. We also do business with each other, and we support and foster each other. So this is the power of Organization Women International Trade, which is really niching into the trade facet. With no further ado, with that introduction, I would like to hand over to Sydonie, and thank you so much for the opportunity to have been able to introduce OWIT and myself. Thank you, Sydonie.
Thank you so much, Madam President. It's our pleasure. Thank you for your welcoming remarks. Now, before I go ahead and introduce our speaker for today, I would like to launch a poll just to ask, where are you joining us from? What is your location? Are you joining us from the US? Are you joining us from Canada? Are you from outside of Canada? We have about 72% of people that have voted already. Give you a few more seconds and then I will close the poll. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. I like to share results with you so you can see that 45% is within the US, 45% is outside of the US, and we have 9%. That's my math doing in the end. 9% according to Zoom that we have that is in Canada. Thank you for sharing that. Now I want to know second poll that I'm launching. This is just about doing business with Canada. Are you already doing business with Canada? Or are you not? All right. We have about 81% of people that are voting. We have, let me end the poll. Just about, we still have 90% going. Are you doing business with Canada or are you not? All right. I'm going to go ahead and share the poll at this point. All right. So we can see that 10% they're doing business with Canada. So there's plenty of opportunities here. 90% of us are not doing business with Canada. All right, so this is a good conversation that we're going to get in with Suzanne, and then hopefully maybe some of that will change. Maybe you'll just have a feel of what Canada is about so you can make your decision. But again, thank you for joining. All right, so before we really get into our conversation, I want to say, please feel free to use the Q&A to ask your question. Use the chat if you'd like to share exactly where you're coming from. That would be neat. OWIT, we do like to collaborate. We like to network. Occasionally, we have our networking events where we all share where we're from and learn from each other. So go ahead if you'd like to share your connections, your LinkedIn profile, whatever it is, we want to connect. Go ahead and use the chat if you would like to do that. All right, so at this point, I'm going to introduce you to our speaker, which is Susan Baka. And our session today is about 45 minutes long. So we're about 10 minutes in. So we'll end about a quarter to the hour. So let's get into it now with Suzanne. So Suzanne is one of the founders and co-VP International of OWIT Toronto. So that's current co-VP International. That's actually the title of OWIT Toronto. Sorry. She is also the president of Bay Communications and Marketing Inc. And she also sits on the board for OWIT International as the co-VP of chapter development, which her responsibilities is really about promoting and assisting in the launch of new chapters of the OWIT world on a global scale, basically worldwide. She's also known as one of Canada's top authorities in entrepreneurship and small business. She is a vocal advocate for women in entrepreneurship and in trade. We don't even need to say that. We know this within our board, within our network, but we wanted to just make sure that you understand that. That's why Suzanne is here today. She served on the Canadian Minister of International Trade, SME, advisory board, and she is a prolific writer and a speaker. She speaks on women and global trade, which includes a public forum that she spoke on for WTO in the past. Please join me in welcoming Susan Baka to this fireside chat. I am so excited to have this talk with you. Suzanne, you know, I have been wanting to do this for a while. Welcome.
Thank you, Sydonie, and welcome to everybody who's joined us. This is amazing that we've got people from all around the world, as well as Canada, even a few from Canada. So I'm sure you folks from Canada will be able to jump in the chat and add some other insights for the audience today.
Awesome, awesome. Now, Suzanne, I gave a little bit about your bio, but I really like when my speaker tells me about themselves a little bit. So can you tell me about yourself in your words, and also a little bit about your business, what you do? A lot of times we get to know you from a level within the organization that we serve, but I also always want to get to know about the business that you created. So please let us know.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, so I'm a passionate about global trade and have spent my company has focused on global trade for many years. Originally as a content provider, doing lots of writing and speaking for governments and financial institutions and organizations. And then kind of moved into doing a lot of trade facilitation work for companies that want to go global. So currently, I do a lot of work with US companies that want to enter or expand in the Canadian market. And this is through work that I do as a consultant with Grow Trade, which acts as the Canadian Trade Office here in Canada for a number of US states. Done a lot of work in helping SMEs in developing countries, and particularly women who want to enter the Canadian market as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And I'm always curious, sort of like why do you give your time and volunteer? I know that we had a brief talk, sort of before this. I didn't get really to that, but you are involved in two organizations from the Toronto end and also from the global end. Briefly, why do you volunteer your time? We know you do such a great job, and you do such a hard job. You actually help to start new OWITs around the world. So not only you do some work in your business where you look at global markets, you also do this as a volunteer. Can you share that with us a little bit?
Okay, well, as I mentioned, I'm really passionate about trade, and I feel that many women don't, are not exposed to the benefits and the things that can do by doing business internationally. I also really enjoy startups, so that's why I got involved in starting up the Canadian chapter, and now also helping launch chapters around the world. It's amazing. I mean, we're from different countries and different cultures, but we all have something in common, and there just seems to be an instant connection. So that's very gratifying. And the network of OWIT women around the world is really just awesome, absolutely awesome. You not only do you make great business contacts, but I've forged many, personal friendships, long-lasting personal friendships over the years.
Awesome. And I know that I could vouch for that. I've seen you in action. All right, we are here to talk about Canada, right? So I would love to get to some of my questions about Canada. So let's start, from a big standpoint, like in terms of a big snapshot. So can you provide just a general snapshot of what do you think about the Canada market right now? Just for those who are not familiar with it, they hear about Canada, but they don't know what it entails, really.
Well, our population is just over 41 million. So although we're a large country, we only have about the same number of people as, say, the state of California. So our market is relatively small. Like a rule of thumb is about 1/10 the size of the US market. And a lot of our population lives in metropolitan areas, and that's a real, been a defining feature is this trend towards urbanization. We have two official languages, English and French, with French predominant in the province of Quebec. There are 10 provinces in Canada, 2 territories. Ontario is the largest, followed by Quebec and BC. And Toronto is like kind of the financial center of the country. And Montreal is really known for being a hub for aerospace. and Vancouver is really an important Pacific port. So these three are really major trade centers in Canada. And we primarily use the metric system here. So distances should be measured in kilometers, not miles. And I'll just end up saying one other piece, which I think is relevant to this audience, which is that women in business here are more likely to have sustainability goals. So a lot of them tackle the things like, what's very important to them is issues like climate change.
Awesome. Thank you. And talk about that climate. Canada can get cold, but there are aspects of Canada that sort of reminds me of, I visited Toronto, and there's some parts that remind me of New York, only because, I have, family in New York and family in Toronto. So they probably just bought and brought me to the familiar areas in that way. But people tend to think or consider, when they think about Canada from a business standpoint, they also think about some similarities to the US. Do you know why?
I think it's because we share a similar language and a similar culture. We watch a lot of the same television shows. So I think from that perspective, people think that we're exactly the same, but there are really subtle cultural differences to be aware of.
Awesome. So why is that?
Well, I mean, let me just talk a little bit about these cultural differences. And by the way, even if you're not from the US, I think this will be helpful for you to know. So first of all, communication style. I think Canadians are generally more reserved and understated. We put a high value on politeness and courtesy. I mean, we're known for being so polite that I think there's even a joke that if you bump into a Canadian, he or she will probably apologize for being in your way. So I don't want to come on too strong. And also you'll find people in the West Coast, like Vancouver area, like more relaxed than say people in central Canada, like Toronto. And I think we tend to be less direct. I mean, if an American says no, it means no. If a Canadian says maybe, it can mean both maybe or no. I think also in terms of decision making, Canadians typically take longer to consider proposals and offers. So you want to sort of give potential customers and partners time. I mean, don't expect decisions like right on the spot. Also, we're very, very culturally diverse. We have high immigration rates here, and you're going to see many ethnicities in the business world. And from a written language perspective, we use British spellings, for example. So that's important in your writing. I mean, if you have a website and you're targeting the Canadian market, in your promotional material, just remember, if it looks too Americanized, it won't resonate as well with Americans. And if you haven't noticed, Canadian signature line is the interjection A, which is often added at the end of sentences. For example, hey, that's kind of interesting, eh?
Got it. That was pretty interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And I can relate to, the British ways or the British spelling for things and doing things that way, as opposed to, sort of the American way to do things. And that, I would imagine, is pretty important when we see anything here in America that's spelt with like labor, spelt with a U. We immediately say that's spelled incorrectly. But if I were in my native country, Jamaica, this would be perfectly fine. This is how we spell labor, right?
Right, yeah.
But of course, being able to appeal to the audience is super important. And this is where someone like yourself comes in to say, hey, we need to make sure that we spell things in this way, or we need to make sure that we position our writing accordingly because of XYZ, especially if you're putting together proposals to do business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even, there's lots of things out there that talk about tailoring your marketing to not just the Canadian market, but to any global market that you're targeting. It's important.
Fair point. Really, really important. And sometimes we don't think about that. We write and think it's great and put together a solid proposal, but it just doesn't speak to our audience. And therefore, that's why we get passed over. So that's why we need experts in their area, regardless of what we do. So thank you for your time, for being here. With that said, and we're talking about doing business in Canada, what would you say are 2 or 3 key things to be aware of? We just talked about one, right? Not
Yeah.
English, but language, how you write, but what are the
Yeah.
other 2 things, or 2 or 3?
Well, I think issues that are really gaining importance in Canada's business landscape, and I'll focus on about 3 of them. This is especially if you're a company exporting that you want to, sell to larger corporations, but it's filtering down to smaller organized, companies as well. And the first thing I would say would be ESG. So that's environmental social governance. So, I mean, companies are increasingly focusing on having responsible and sustainable business practices, especially related to environment and climate change. Consumers here are demanding greater accountability from companies and brands around sustainability and reducing the environmental impact. And you may not know that Canada's government is committed to achieving net zero emissions by the year 2050. So this is really driving a lot of this as well. So, it's really important, like if let's say you're an apparel exporter, which many women are, it's really important for you to, proactively market yourselves, with, say, published ESG policies or things, because buyers are really scrutinizing the entire production process, right? Not just sourcing, but all the way, through to the end. Yeah, and the second thing I would talk about would be digital marketing and e-commerce. Consumer behavior here is changing. E-commerce is really deeply embedded in Canadian shopping habits. They're moving away from traditional bricks and mortar stores to embrace online shopping through various devices. So I think, 80, I think the latest stats are at least 80% of Canadians made online purchases last year. And the retail landscape is changing a lot, reflecting all of this. So the retail stores still vary in size, but the presence of larger department stores has diminished. And, I mean, something like Holt Renfrew remains a high-end department store, but mid-market retailers like, say, Simons and Hudson's Bay are now grappling with increased competition and pressure to innovate. Discounters like Walmart continue to sell apparel as well, and big box stores like Costco and Winners still hold significant market share in, say, apparel. And the last thing I'll talk about is as an issue that's gained a lot of traction in recent years is diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a big growth in companies of all sizes embracing DEI. Many have introduced initiatives. I mean, supplier diversity is increasing here in terms of large organizations buying from historically disadvantaged groups such as women, Indigenous, racial minorities, LGBTQ. So yeah, those are the 3 things that I'd
Suzanne? So I think she's frozen there for a little bit. Let's give her a minute to see if her computer will come back. Now you're back. Suzanne, you froze for a minute, for a little bit there, but you are wrapping up.
Oh, okay. So I finished up with the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece.
Yes, and we heard that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Good.
Okay. Awesome. I wanted to ask about we talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and amongst other things, but I was always curious about any issues, basically in Canada, issues that are gaining importance in the business landscape, especially if we're having companies that are exporting to Canada that want to sell to large corporations. Do we have any issues there that are gaining importance that you would say?
Well, as I mentioned, a lot of these big corporations now have supplier diversity programs. So if women in particular are certified through organizations like We Connect International, that's I mean, that's not necessarily a foot in the door, but it's going to be one of the things in your toolbox to help market yourself, right? And then, Canada has 2 certification programs for women as well as, for other marginalized groups as well. So hooking up with, Canadians that are part of those organizations is a terrific way to partner and to try to penetrate these larger organizations. And there's conferences that one can go to. I was going to talk about that a little bit later, yeah, when I'm talking about resources.
Okay, awesome. So I think this is a good time too to even talk a little bit about government. As far as what are the opportunities that you see that's there for government contracting and any strategies that are there to sort of enter the market? There's a lot of time.
Yeah.
You could go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, like whether wherever you're selling in any country or targeting, I mean, you obviously need to identify the best channel like for your product or service. But I think that selling to government is obviously one strategy. It's possible to bid directly on government requests for proposals, but some of you may choose to, as I mentioned, work with a Canadian-based partner to do so, and that's where like joint ventures and alliances and licensing agreements can play a key role, and you can source these partners through organizations like we've mentioned, plus industry associations. But there are obviously other ways to enter the market, which I think you can do successfully in Canada. And that would be online sales. So selling on Amazon.ca or other online marketplaces or third-party platforms and pricing in Canadian dollars. So, that's generally a good way to test the market without a really huge investment. And many of you probably become exporters by default just because you're selling online and suddenly you're getting Canadian customers. You can sell direct, to customers, especially if if you have products, obviously, and you're using, say, third-party warehousing here or in the country. And then you could set up an office here. Of course, that gets into, more expenses and commitment. And there's something called the non-resident importer program, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because there's a lot there, but that allows a company like from the US to act as the importer of record here. And so it really kind of simplifies the whole shipping process and customs, and it means it makes business easier for your Canadian customers.
Okay, awesome. Just the name again, if you don't mind, non-resident.
It was called the Non-Resident Importer Program, NRI. It's an initiative of the Canadian Border Services Agency. Yeah, so you could Google that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. In your opinion, products or services, which is better to say do a government contract or to do business in Canada?
Yeah. Well, I mean, both really. I mean, many women are involved in services where I think, although we cover lots of other areas too, but there's a high representation of women entrepreneurs in services and a big opportunity in Canada. And I'll talk about some of the best sectors, I think, here. I think consumers want to live their best lives. So they're really focusing on prevention and performance and personalized solutions. So anything that's related to health and wellness, whether that's a service or products like organic and natural food products, that's really a key opportunity. Like over 90% of Canadians place a really high value on eating healthy. So, beverages with added minerals or functional ingredients, caffeinated energy drinks, snack bars with vitamins, alcohol-free beverages, better for you snacks, sports nutrition. All of these are good opportunities. Although, many of that is competitive. Like I was just at Canadian Health Food Association show a couple of weeks ago, and it's probably one of the most dynamic shows as far as the numbers of people and interest. It's really high there, so it really reflects this growth in people's interest in all of this. Pet foods is really tops a lot of things too. Another area like healthcare, we've got an aging population, so anything related to healthcare products or services is good. And there's just many more. I mean, services, professional or management services, technical services, like if you're an architect, things related to finance and insurance. Another area that's really big, not necessarily, it's more product focused, is the whole electric vehicle supply chain, because Canada has a critical mineral strategy, and to grow rapidly to meet the needs of a clean energy transition in our 2050 goal. So especially that's in transportation electrification. So anything like charging systems and energy storage and battery testing or end of life recycling. We also have a vibrant tech sector, especially in video game development, animation, film and TV. I mean, you may know that Canada is a top international filming location. Like we're kind of nicknamed Hollywood North here. And there's many other sectors too, like aerospace, cosmetics, education and training, travel and tourism, ICT. I mean, I sort of mentioned things that I know a lot. There are many women. So the sky's the limit, Sydonie.
Awesome. We love to hear that. For sure. I remember when I visited Toronto and I went shopping and I was just like so blown away by how more expensive things were. For the
Yeah, your American dollar goes a lot longer way here than ours does in the US, in some other parts of the world.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, okay, this might be good. It's not good for me, the consumer right now, but it might be a good opportunity for someone that wants to enter into the Canadian market for the type of things that I was buying, which was, fashion and clothing and all of that. So that's wonderful. I love to hear all of these sectors. I hear a lot about tech, healthcare, sustainability type, anything with those kind of initiatives, and of course education and all of that. So what would you say are I know you gave me some already, but some good market entry strategies just in general?
Yeah, just to kind of repeat what I had said was you can sell direct, or if you have a product or service, you can sell through, brokers or distributors, selling online, finding partners here to align with, to go through government procurement. Yeah. So I think that would sort of covers the bases.
Got it. Thank you. If I'm thinking about partners and resources, can women exporters outside of Canada tap into that, to help expand to their business to Canada?
You mean like, resources and partners? Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so much I could say on this. It could be a whole webinar, but there's just really a host of them. Canada has many women's business associations and organizations. I find these can serve as a soft landing ground, and a good place for women to find partners. There's women-friendly ones like OWIT. We have chapters in Toronto and Ottawa. There's Grow Your Business, which is based in the West Coast, but it has a national and international reach. I talked about the certification organizations like WeConnect and WeBe Canada. There's an Aboriginal and Minority Supplier Council one, a Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce as well. Plus, we have, I'm seeing this more and more, that there's more and more sector-specific associations coming. We have women in food and women in aerospace, just as examples, and digital ones. And then there's many trade associations that are not, gender specific, but there would be like the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, or I mentioned the Canadian Health Food Association or the Giftware Association. And like all of these have trade shows, which are really great places to meet potential customers and distributors or partners, and, glean, that on the ground market intelligence as well. AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce in Canada, has chapters across the country, and that, which are part of the US Chamber of Commerce. And then for those of you outside of North America who are in, more in developing countries, there's the Trade Facilitation Office Canada, which helps exporters from developing countries access the Canadian market, and has a vast number of fabulous resources on its website, tfocanada.ca. So if you're planning to come to Canada, I would say scope out things if you're, and check out events that are going to be happening when you're here. You'll be amazed at the contacts that you'll make. I always do that before I travel to a country. I find it immensely valuable. And you can look at it this way, Sydonie. Another benefit of doing business beyond your borders is expanding your personal horizons and just having a lot of fun too. That could be learning how to salsa dance in Latin America, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I love
but
it.
I would like to add, because I think that this is important, especially for your US folks, that there's a lot of customized support in entering the Canadian market. There's a number of US commercial service offices where you find specialists who provide like comprehensive assistance, and they put on great webinars. And other countries, you all have trade reps in Canada, and their role is to help exporters like you enter the Canadian market. So you really want to tap into all of those. And I think there's people on the joining here, like maybe Sarah Bonner, who's with the U.S. Small Business Administration, which is a great resource. And Sarah is an international trade specialist there. There's the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. So they have a ton of market information that's really valuable. And even some of the US states have trade and economic development agencies that have trade reps in Canada. And I had mentioned that I'm involved. I do a lot of work with one of them called Grow Trade. So we help companies from the Great Lakes states penetrate the Canadian market. And by doing trade facilitation services like market research or finding partners or distributors or setting up meetings, that kind of thing. And then the last thing I'll mention, I know I'm going on and on about this, but there's just so much out there that people aren't aware of. And I think that's leveraging trade missions that are offered by not just the US government, but governments around the world. Participating in these is really a great way to gain that firsthand market intel and to meet, good contacts and potential partners and your local movers and shakers. Many of them have one-on-one, B2B meetings. I feel that not enough women take advantage of trade missions, and I would really like to encourage you to do so. Here in Toronto, we've organized some to Mexico, but our governments around the world are doing these all the time. Some of them are gender specific, some of them are, right?
Awesome. I have taken so much notes just from this. Thank you so much. You did mention, you did give a website, and I always like to reiterate it. It's tfocanada.ca.
Yeah.
That is Trade Facilitation Canada. That's one of them. And of course, you talked about the U.S. commercial services. You talked about, avenues through the SBA. organizations. We are in an organization right now that's global. That's so important. I have had the pleasure of doing some trainings for We Connect. And a lot of those trainings are sponsored by larger organization that wants, the members to get proper training when it comes to procurement and all of that. So when you're part of these organizations, you're going to have to do your work in terms of networking and getting yourself out there, but there's so much training that's involved and that you can network across your borders, right? Just to be able to meet others and just to see what the opportunities are. Because sometimes when you're just surfing the internet, you're not going to get it. You really do need to do that trade mission that Suzanne is talking about. You need to probably go and, shake some hands. If you can't, you attend virtual events, like this and network and all of that. So, you be able to meet people and to be able to talk about your products or services and find out what the needs are within their countries or where that you want to enter. I did see someone that was asking about Kenya. I don't know if Suzanne can answer that, but I do know that We Connect always, they're so involved. And Frida Owinga, which is our past president, she's the one that represents Africa for We Connect. So We Connect is, if you're in the US, if you know about WeBank, that's a certifying company organization. If you're a woman-owned business, you do get your certification. We Connect is just a global sort of resource that's behind WeBank. So that's to put it in perspective for you. One last thing as we wrap up, Suzanne, you mentioned trade missions to Mexico, and I can't get this out of my head. The EMC, which is the trade agreement between our the Americas and is it EMC? Did I get that wrong?
It's USMCA.
The USMCA. Is it USMCA?
Yeah, USMCA, US, Canada, Mexico, US, Mexico, Canada agreement, which replaced NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, a number of years ago. But interestingly enough, in the US, it's referred to as USMCA. In Canada, it's referred to as CUSMA. And in Mexico, it's referred to as TMEC, because the convention for these free trade agreements is that it's called by your own country's name first in the acronyms, right? So, but yeah, those are they offer several benefits for companies from, in this case, Canada, or sorry, the US and Mexico, for exporting to Canada. So it can streamline trade, reduce barriers. In some cases, it eliminates tariffs altogether. Just enhances access to the market, and it simplifies kind of customs procedures too, and it's also providing support for small and medium-sized enterprises. So there have been a number of initiatives that, for example, have brought together organizations that support SMEs and including women's SMEs into something called the SME Counselors Network, and they put on kind of events and things and bring together organizations to share best practices and how they can better support SMEs when it comes to trading across our borders. So yeah, those are important. And of course, there are free trade agreements that Canada has with other countries too. So you can go on our Global Affairs Canada website and it lists all of those. So if you're from another country, you want to really use free trade agreements as a competitive advantage.
Awesome. Global Affairs Canada website. That's another one I'm writing down. I'm learning so much from this. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on now to any questions that we have. We don't have a lot in the Q&A, but we did have some things that popped up in the chat. And I just love it. People are sharing links. They are sharing resources. And this is what it's about, right? It's collaboration. It's networking. It's all about this. I'm going to scroll between to see if there's anything, but I do remember that there was one question around digital marketing or so, if there's any opportunities known for that. Of course, she talks about so many avenues and
Yeah.
different things that are, available, but someone did ask
Yeah.
specifically, I wanted to.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously that's a big area. It's also a very competitive area. I mean, there's lots of Canadian companies that do that too. So I think if you're offering something really unique, or also partner up, with Canadian digital folks, that is another good strategy. Yeah.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any more questions before we wrap up and finish up with Suzanne? I think that the majority of questions have been answered, or they're answering sort of themselves. People are contributing, which is amazing here.
Yeah, because I'm not the expert. That's what I said. There's lots of people on this
yeah,
on this in this virtual meeting here that have all kinds of other things to say, right? Yeah.
yeah, and that's what it's about. Community.
And Sidonie, before you wrap up, can I just give one last piece of advice?
Absolutely.
Okay, just because I'm passionate about global trade and sharing the benefits of going global with other women, particularly through my involvement in OWIT, I have to say, connect with a women's organization like OWIT
Yeah.
in Canada, or join a local chapter in your part of the world. Or it's not only a terrific networking organization, and men, as Sydonie mentioned, are welcome too, but you'll also learn a lot about international trade through the educational sessions, and then there's this individual membership if you don't. But Sidonie's does the virtual piece if you don't have a chapter in your own city. So you just go to owit.org to check it all out, and talk to women who are already exporting, because just offer to buy them a coffee, or even better, a glass of wine, because there's nothing better than hearing it from those who are actually doing it. And just on a lighter note, just a quick bonus tip, which is Canadians are proud of our Tim Hortons coffee and donut chain. So take a Timmy's donut to your first business meeting and you'll be starting off on a good foot.
Wow, that's really key. Insider information there for sure. Those little things, they go a long way. I know this because, of course, I mean, a lot of business professionals are here and you've been in business meetings and stuff. Just little things to give you the edge. So thank you so much for that, Suzanne. Any last remarks? I know you just gave some tips, but I just want to also ask you if you have any last remarks.
No, I'll just thank everybody for joining in and sharing your own thoughts and things, and stay connected through OWIT and all these other different organizations. Wonderful organizations are out there. I think we're living in a great time for women, and as I said before, the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that. I don't know if Julia is still here. Julia, would you like to close with anything as well? In the meantime, I just added my LinkedIn in here if anyone wants to stay in touch. I also put the OWIT website in there. I also will take you to the membership page if you're interested in becoming a member wherever you are. And I encourage everyone to do the same. Let's network before we get out of here. Julia, turn it over to you.
Susan, wonderful. Thank you so much for all the tips and the hacks that you have given us how to make business in Canada. And what strikes out here is the following. To have respect and consideration if you want to do global trade in a different country than yours. Understanding the culture, understanding the habits and traditions before you actually start. Make a visit, try to ask people around you, people like OWIT, because we have got members all around the world, so we can give you always advice how to do business. Apart from that, I heard a lot from Susan, networking, collaboration, partnership, and all these wonderful, powerful, websites and organizations, which are so important to do business. So I think we've got a wealth of knowledge now, and we learned lots of things. Thanks so much for being so open and share everything. And this is where organizations come in. You mentioned, Sydonie, about VConnect. I'm also certified VConnect, women-led business. And I was at the VConnect Paris conference. Amazing. And the B2B meetings that you can make there during 7 minutes, and it's so nicely tailored and orchestrated, you can't imagine. And you've got direct access to all the global key stakeholders and players in different markets, ranging from pharmaceutical to apparel to food, tourism, anything else. So it's important that we do networking a lot. And unfortunately, that means work. And this is what Susan said as well, which I loved. We don't take enough advantage about all the resources that we have at our hands. We need to know it, but we need to ask as well to get it. It's like a little baby who cries and wants to have, of course, what, the bottle. If it doesn't cry, we as moms even think everything is fine. So you need to definitely raise your hand and be proactive, courageous, and go for it. Other than that, thank you so much, Sydonie, for pulling out this wonderful webinar. Susan, for all your wisdom and knowledge. She is, what shall I say? I wanted to say mafia, but mafia is not nice. The tribe. Yeah, we are the powerhouses, right? So we are with the organization, I don't know since how many years, I can't even count anymore, like my Susan. And we always have wonderful events online, but also on-site with big summits that we are organizing. So be part of the whole tribe, connect, which you started already to do, and I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I don't know if everyone hears this here. We're talking about collaboration. We're not just talking about where we are and who we are. We're not just talking about OWIT. We're talking about other organizations. We're talking about just the need for women to just collaborate and move each other forward. And this is what we're all about. So it makes me excited. I love to host these. I love to be a part of them. And, you know, again, if you have any questions or so, you know, feel free to reach out to us. I don't know if Suzanne dropped her LinkedIn. I don't know if you want anyone to reach out to you in that way. But Suzanne, being that you're here, if someone needs to reach out to you just to ask about the Canadian market, how could they reach you? What's the best way?
Yeah. You can. I'll try to get my my LinkedIn in here
I'll do it.
before we wrap up. But yeah, that would be fine. Yes.
All right.
And if I can't answer a question, I usually know who to direct people to.
Awesome. Well, you already gave us so much. That's Suzanne's profile. I just copied and pasted in.
Oh,
I tried to
okay,
be
super. Thank you.
my
You're quicker than me at this.
Well, tech is my thing, sort of. Well, thank you so much again, everyone. Thanks for joining. Hope to see you at the next webinar. All right, visit OWIT.org. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao, adios.